Royals from across Europe showed up in force for the D-Day memorials at Omaha Beach. Prince William is looking ever more stately as he continues to look ever more the heir on the international stage. We also have King Abdullah of Jordan celebrating 25 years on the throne, and Belgian royals doing something very surprising, you could say, voting in a political election. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Crown Report. My name is Brittany, and on this program, we go over some of the major royal news stories of the week. So if you guys want to hit a follow or subscribe, that would be absolutely fantastic. And so this is about ending on June 11th. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and get into today's program. Last week, obviously, with the D-Day memorials and everything, I couldn't help but notice that Prince William looks ever more like the royal statesman, the future heir to the British throne. This is actually a picture of him on his way to Cardiff in Wales. Somebody even pointed out, and I think it's incredibly true, that his red binder there actually looks very similar to the red boxes that the monarch receives that includes government documents that they need to review. And this is very, very poignant for William, who has very much had a unique role within the royal sphere in many ways. Because of the Queen's long life, Prince William, unlike the vast majority of his contemporaries, has remained very much in the shadow of his father and very much constrained by not pushing too much ahead of his father. So, for example, Crown Princess Victoria, when she was born, her father was king. And so, yes, there's a period of time where her brother was the crown prince for a very short period of time. But once the government regulation switched, she has been the crown princess since she could remember. We also have now King Frederick, who is crown prince from a very, very young age. I think he was 4 or 5, maybe, when he became the crown prince. We also have Princess Elizabeth in Belgium, and she inherited the title the Duchess of Brabant, which identifies her as the future monarch of Belgium when she was just a child. And so William, very much in comparison to others throughout Europe, has very much been throughout his entire adult life in the spot of the second to the heir. So the heir. This again is something that we really haven't seen in any other royal families. And so he has very much been held back in some ways. Now, while I think he appreciated that because he did get to spend more time with his family, he got to be an air ambulance pilot, which I think was incredibly crucial to giving him a greater understanding of what people go through in crisis. It's really now his time to step out into the spotlight. And he really is starting to look like the future statesman that he is. I think this picture is a great example of it. And recently at the D-Day memorials, he was representing the United Kingdom. Not only his father, but actually, since the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak wasn't there, he was representing the entirety of the British government. The Defense Minister was there as well, but Prince William was very much the face of the British monarchy, and he was seen chatting with other statesmen and royals, with President Joe Biden, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. You also have French President Emmanuel Macron. You have the other monarchs in Europe, like Queen Maxima and everything. So his future has now become incredibly clear. And I think this is great for William, but he also has a huge struggle as well. Because what unfortunately has really, you could say, some ways damaged his public image is that he has been wildly pulled into Harry's mess. And Prince Harry, unfortunately, because of how him and Meghan have operated since leaving the royal family, really has pulled the entire royal family into this sort of bizarre soap opera where everybody's competing. There's all these crazy characters, and it has really, in some ways, dragged down the monarchy or the perception of it in the public. Because unfortunately, what Harry has done is turn the monarchy into a celebrity sideshow, all of the Kardashians or something like that. And so this is something that William really does have to push against. And you could almost argue that maybe this was Harry's intention all along because he couldn't be king. So he decided, well, you know what? I'm going to just drag William down to my level. And I think it's clear too that Harry is just insanely jealous of the influence that William has in the world, the influence that Harry just can't match. And I'm going to do a whole video on that you can check out here if you are interested. But what I really wanted to focus on here is that the difference between celebrity and royalty has become so mixed that has, I think, hindered William in some ways. But I think his presence at the D-Day memorial, his recent events have really shown him to be the statesman that he is. And so if he can continue, I think, to go beyond that because the Harry situation will always be around. The more William can push against it, the more he can show himself to be a world leader. I think the better off he will be in many, many ways. And of course, the greatest hindrance and challenge I'm sure this year for William has, of course, been the diagnosis of cancer, not only for his father, but also his young wife as well. Catherine is only 42. She's very, very young, very fit, very healthy, but she had a massive surgery. And then beyond that, she needed to start chemotherapy treatments. And unfortunately, I think because of how the celebrity with Harry and Meghan has dragged down royalty, that the whole hashtag where is Kate thing has been trending way, way, way too much. And William has been pulled into this very unfortunate light, makes him seem like he's hiding Catherine or that there's something more going on when there just really isn't. Some of it just comes simply from, I think, ignorance about how royals function, because people wonder, oh, why isn't there a picture of Kate if she is out and about in the UK? And the simple reason is that oftentimes when it comes to royals, there is a respect for the institution and there's a respect for Catherine and her position. So there's not the same need as there would be maybe with a celebrity to get that all precious shot. Also, as well, paparazzi know that the royals are hands off. So if you are in the UK, you will notice there's not really a lot of paparazzi pictures of the royals. And that is because there is a gentleman's agreement between the press and the palace. So if there is a picture of the royals that, let's say, I've seen ones of them at the park where they're having a picnic as a family. I've seen a couple other ones over the years, Catherine getting ice cream for Charlotte and George, is that those are pictures taken by members of the public, generally not paparazzi people. And the reason is, number one, they can't sell them in the UK. Yes, they make it through to American media and everything, but they're not able to sell them in the UK. So there is this situation where people are leaving Catherine alone. But unfortunately, because of the unfortunate suicide of Lady Gabriella's husband, that was around the same time of Catherine's diagnosis, those things got conflated. And it spun out into this wild soap opera that I just think is so completely unfortunate. And especially as William is still getting used to his role as the heir. So these are the challenges I feel like William faces, is that how Harry has celebritized royalty and obviously everything going on with Catherine, which are things wildly he can't control, but also things that maybe the palace could have handled better. But despite all this, and I know there's a lot of challenges coming his way, Prince William is really coming into his own. And I think his Earthshot Prize and Homewards projects are two great examples of that, because Earthshot Prize reflects a global ambition and it has become a huge influence, I think, on the conservation movement. And what's really, really good about it is that I think that the Earthshot Prize focuses on solutions, not villainizing other people or events or damaging artwork and those sorts of things. There just seems to be the stop oil people just seems to be a crowd that simply annoys. They sit in the middle of the roadway, they hold up traffic, they cans of soup at priceless artwork because it is so important for them. And they think, oh, and trying to damage the Magna Carta. Somebody had like a sledgehammer. It was like trying to damage the Magna Carta, which is a document that really was the springboard for eventually what became the Declaration of Independence, and democracy in general started in many ways with the Magna Carta. And so for the Western world, the Magna Carta reflects our desires and ambitions for freedom and liberty. But other people just decide they want to destroy instead. And so I think that's what's so good about William's project here as Earthshot, is that it's focused on solutions and it's not telling people, hey, you shouldn't travel, you shouldn't have a carbon footprint, all these sorts of things. Yes, they sort of encourage that, but they're not telling people, oh, you can't travel, you can't do X, you can't do Y because of conservation issues and everything, which I feel like, again, puts people off that particular topic. But the other thing he's doing, which I think is also very great, is that he's has this Homewards homelessness project. So he is utilizing his Duchy of Cornwall to actually address homelessness in the area, which I think is just a really, really smart move, because he has this global project and ambition with the Earthshot Prize, but yet he is not forgetting the marginalized at home. And I think that is a perfect balance to strike, because yes, as a royal, you do have this global platform, especially as a British royal. So you can influence a variety of things, but you can't forget people at home. And so that's why I think right now Prince William has two fantastic projects. I mean, he has multiple other projects too, but I think those two are just incredibly important because they do balance these two issues so well that I think he has this reflection of a statesman. And so as we see him continue to grow on the international stage, I think we will see more and more of him coming into his own, having his own footprint as the Prince of Wales because unlike his father, I think his tenure as the Prince of Wales will probably be much shorter. And so I think he should be preparing to become king in just the next, you could say, about 10 years. Now, if he's lucky, it'll be longer, but I think he's coming into this very soon. And so I just love this picture. He's going to visit an Earthshot Prize project that's looking at seaweed in Wales and Cardiff. And so I think this reflects a man who is thinking, a man who is looking ahead and forwards, and not somebody who is looking behind them, even though probably he might actually technically be looking behind him. But that's how the seat is faced. And I think it's great as well that he used public transportation here. Anytime the royals can do that, I think it's a fantastic thing. And so I think we'll see William continue to shine. But again, this won't be an easy path with everything Harry and Meghan are doing, and of course, what his wife is going through as well. But I think too, I think it's a terrible thing, but I think the opportunity to have a family member go through that and the lessons that it'll teach their children, I think are going to be marvelous and suit them very, very well in the future because they can go, much like William, who lost his mother so young. It gives you a greater deal of empathy in many ways. It gives you a greater deal of understanding. They're not so removed from the rest of the world that they have suffered. And I think to know that cancer can hit anybody in any walk of life. And it's something that if William can really harness that and if his children can really learn those great lessons, I think it'll serve them very, very well in the future. So I look forward to seeing hopefully the entire Wales's family, maybe even Catherine, on the balcony of Buckingham Palace for Trooping the Color. And speaking of Trooping the Color, just to let you guys know, we will have a special live stream at 6:30 a.m. Eastern time. Yes, that is early. Now, that won't be when the parade starts because it starts at 10:20 a.m. And that means it's 5:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I already feel like 6:30 is a little too early. But if you are interested in watching that and experience Trooping the Color as a group, especially if we do have that moment where Catherine comes out, I think it will absolutely break the internet. And before we move on to discussing more about D-Day, why don't you go ahead and listen to some of Prince William's speeches to commemorate this incredible anniversary.
Our guests of honor today are those veterans from the Normandy landing that came from across our nation and from all walks of life to join in the fight against tyranny. Some were still only in their teens. In their letters and diaries, we see their great strength. This is an extract from a letter by Captain Alistair Bannerman of the Royal Warwickshire Regiment. I do not believe that I can now write for very long. We can now see the French coast, and very soon we will have to play our part. I know that you are with me. Au revoir. God bless. I love you. Captain Bannerman survived the landings and the war. Too many never returned. We will always remember those who served and those who waved them off. The mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters who watched their loved ones go into battle, unsure if they would ever return. Today we remember the bravery of those who crossed this sea to liberate Europe, those who ensured that Operation Overlord was a success, and those who waited for their safe return. The assault on D-Day remains the most ambitious military operation in history. The events of that windy, grey day ultimately led to the liberation of Europe, but it came at a heavy cost. Standing here today in peaceful silence, it is almost impossible to grasp the courage it would have taken to run into the fury of battle that very day. All of you demonstrated heroism and determination that ensured fascism was conquered. Ensuring the memory of those who fought for freedom lives on is why we've come together again today to say thank you. Thank you for our freedom. Thank you for your service.
So obviously the big thing last week was, of course, the D-Day memorials on June 6th. And royals of all sorts attended. We had King Charles and Queen Camilla. They weren't at this particular event I'm showing here, which is the D-Day Memorial, the international one on Omaha Beach. They were one there for the British Legion. And Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron and his wife attended that with King Charles and Queen Camilla. But we have as well Prince William here at this event, King Philippe and Queen Matilda. We have King Wilhelm Alexander and Queen Maxima, Prince Albert, and Andrea Katsuragi, who was a bit of a surprise. That is Princess Caroline's son. But I was actually looking for pictures of Queen Maxima for something else, and I happened to see Andrea. So he was there. We have Grand Duke Henri of Luxembourg, King Frederick of Denmark, and Crown Prince Haakon of Norway all attended the various events, with the vast majority of the international commemorative ceremony at Omaha Beach. They were there with many world leaders, including US President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And why all these royals are attending is you'll notice that they're actually very specifically representing the various troops, because obviously the biggest contingent of the D-Day forces were made up of the US, British, and Canadian troops. But we did have additional ones from Australia, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, France, Greece, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, and Poland. And so if you notice, basically all the royals that attended represent those countries. Now, the exceptions are Prince Albert of Monaco and Grand Duke Henri of Luxembourg. They are both small principalities or grand ducals. So it is interesting to see this as a gathering of royals representing their countries as well. And just to give greater context to this event, this is probably the last time we will see many veterans attend. This is the 80th anniversary. Many of those who went were in their hundreds or pushing 100. And so in the next 5 years, I imagine the vast majority will pass away. So unfortunately, this will probably be the last big gathering of D-Day veterans ever. And so that is quite a difficult thing in some ways to think about, because I feel like there is such misinformation anymore, especially in the realm of history. And so to have veterans there who can share what they experience, same with the Holocaust survivors and everything, without them, I think it becomes a bit easier for some people to rewrite aspects of history. So it is a very, very poignant moment. And the other thing that I note is obviously President Vladimir Zelensky did attend, and he got a huge applause. I think he actually got the biggest applause out of everyone and a standing ovation and everything. Even Joe Biden and Prince William did not get as big of applause, I don't think, as President Zelensky. So many of them, I feel like these countries, and I know we've talked about this, but I just want to reiterate again that so many in Europe are feeling the heat of Russia, that they are very worried about where Russia is going. And so there was apparently an interaction with one of the veterans and Zelensky, and the veteran apparently tried to stand and tried to kiss his hand and everything, and Zelensky got down and he said, "You're the savior of the people. It brings tears to my eyes," is what the veteran said. Zelensky protested against that, but the man said, "No, you're my hero," because Zelensky said, "You're the hero. I'm not." And so Vladimir Putin did attend the ceremonies on the 70th anniversary, but was not invited to the 75th nor the 80th, obviously. And if you remember, if you don't know, the Allied forces, the major Allied forces of World War II, which was how the city of Berlin was split, was the United States, France, the UK, and Russia. And in fact, as well, when you look at the United Nations, those on the Security Council include the United States, France, United Kingdom, Russia, and China, and the sixth spot is rotating. And so 5 of the great powers at that point, the Allied forces, 2 of them could say the Western powers don't really get along that well with anymore, because World War II was very much the thing that reset the whole world. World War II reset the lines, reset everything. And so there was a different perspective getting out of that. And for a very brief moment, Russia and the United States and the United Kingdom and France and everything were allied against the German forces. And so because of that, obviously Russia had a huge influence, and Russia was very helpful in pushing the lines back from the Eastern Front. Germany expanded way too much into the Eastern Front. My always perspective is, and this has been a historical truth for all of mankind, is that if you're going to invade Russia, you must invade Russia before winter hits, because if winter hits, and you haven't taken control, you're out of luck. So that is what obviously Germany discovered. That was with Napoleon discovered as well. And so all of those things together, it is interesting to see how in the 80 years since the war, we've had a vast changing of alliances, where we were friendly with Russia, antagonistic with Russia, friendly with Russia again, and then finally, once again, starting to get a little bit antagonistic. And so obviously it's an antagonistic on both sides, but it is interesting to see and consider there. And so I just wanted to point that out. And obviously in this line here, you have from left to right, you have Jill Biden, Joe Biden, President Emmanuel Macron, Brigitte Macron, Prince William. So seated next to, you could say, the two big people here, because President Emmanuel Macron was really the host, and the United States with Joe Biden was a bit of the host as well. It was really Emmanuel. So Prince William is seated there right next to Brigitte, showing his importance in this situation. It's obviously as well reflected in that the United Kingdom and the United States were two of the biggest forces. President Trudeau was on the far side. Now, I don't know the two people next to Prince William, but the next one over is our Grand Duke Henri of Luxembourg, and then next to him is King Wilhelm Alexander, and then Queen Maxima there. King Philippe and Queen Matilda are on the next side, along with Crown Prince Haakon and Crown Prince Frederick. So, or not Crown Prince, King Frederick and Prince Albert as well. Andrea was somewhere else in the crowd. Again, it was kind of interesting that he was there, given that he at one point could have been the heir to the Monaco throne via his mother. So the throne would have passed from Albert if he had passed away to Caroline to Andrea. Obviously, as well, things have changed now because we have Prince Jacques and Gabriella. So it will pass to Jacques, which is Prince Albert's legitimate son. He has one illegitimate son and one illegitimate daughter. But anyways, very, very interesting there. And just, again, great to see William here on this stage. So King Charles was not at the Omaha Beach ceremony there, and was instead at the UK Ministry of Defense and Royal British Legion's commemorative event. For those wondering, he is wearing the Field Marshal No. 4 Tropical Service dress uniform, which I think actually looks rather dashing on him. He and Queen Camilla were there and joined by French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte. Prince William was at the Canadian Memorial. And so this was earlier in the day, and then later in the day, they had the official commemorative ceremony internationally together. And so why don't you go ahead and take a listen to King Charles's speech at Portsmouth and Normandy.
80 years ago, on D-Day, the 6th of June 1944, our nation and those which stood alongside us faced what my grandfather, King George VI, described as the supreme test. How fortunate we were, and the entire free world, that a generation of men and women in the United Kingdom and other allied nations did not flinch when the moment came to face that test. On the beaches of Normandy, in the seas beyond, and in the skies overhead, very many of them never came home. It is with the most profound sense of gratitude that we remember them and all those who served at that critical time. We recall the lesson that comes to us again and again across the decades. Free nations must stand together to oppose tyranny. As the years pass, the veterans of the Normandy campaign become ever fewer in number. That is why I'm so proud that we have a permanent national memorial in Normandy, by which to remember the more than 22,000 service personnel in British units who gave their lives. It was built at the suggestion of a veteran, George Batts, to honor those who fought on this ground 80 years ago and who continued for 3 months of the war's fiercest fighting to secure Normandy. This vital start to the liberation of Europe was a vast Allied effort. Among the names inscribed on the walls and pillars of this memorial are men and women from more than 30 different nations. They fought together for what my grandfather, King George VI, described as a world in which goodness and honor may be the foundation of the life of men in every land. Let us pray such sacrifice need never be made again. And let us commit to carrying forward their resounding message of courage and resilience in the pursuit of freedom. Our gratitude is unfailing, and our admiration eternal. To us is given the honor of striking a blow for freedom, which will live in history. And in the better days that lie ahead, men will speak with pride of our doings, which would strike that blow for freedom and be recorded as the greatest amphibious operation in history. Yet all knew that both victory and failure were possible, and none could know their fate. Aircrew flying overhead, sailors manning warships, or troops in assault craft battering their way through the stormy swell to the shore, all must have questioned whether they would survive and how they would respond when faced with such mortal danger. The stories of courage, resilience, and solidarity, which we have heard today and throughout our lives, cannot fail to move us, to inspire us, and to remind us of what we owe to that great wartime generation. It is our privilege to hear their testimony, but our role is not purely passive. It is our duty to ensure that we and future generations do not forget their service and their sacrifice in replacing tyranny with freedom. The Allied actions of that day ensured the forces of freedom secured first a toehold in Normandy, then liberated France, and ultimately the whole of Europe from the stranglehold of a brutal totalitarianism. Let us never forget that the soldiers who fought in the campaign launched from this place came from 30 nations, from across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and allied countries. The Allied victory was a truly collective effort, born of the fortitude and hard work of those who remained on the home front. As we give thanks for all those who gave so much to win the victory, whose fruits we still enjoy to this day, for we are all eternally in their debt.
There was also a video and some criticism regarding Queen Camilla not holding hands with the French president's wife, Brigitte, when they went up to lay flowers for the memorial. So I will go ahead and let you take a look, but I think the whole thing is a bit ridiculous. Sometimes too, you want to just commemorate something by yourself. Sometimes you just don't feel like interacting with someone. So I think the whole hoopla over everything was a bit overblown. So next we're going to talk about Trooping the Color. Obviously, I said we'll be doing a live stream, but on last Saturday, on June 8th, there was a dress rehearsal by the Irish Guards. And if you remember or do not remember, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is the colonel of the Irish Guards. And so because she wasn't able to attend the event, which she was initially scheduled to do and oversee the troops, she did send a letter to them. So go ahead and take a listen here.
So yesterday, the Princess of Wales, in her capacity as the colonel of your regiment, wrote to your regiment lieutenant colonel, in which she says, "I wanted to write to you to let you know how proud I am of the entire regiment ahead of the colonel's review and Trooping the Colour. I appreciate everyone Trooping the Colour this year has been practicing for months and dedicating many hours to ensuring their uniforms and drill are immaculate. Being your colonel remains an honour, and I'm very sorry that I'm unable to make the salute at this year's colonel's review. Please pass on my apologies to the whole regiment. I do hope that I'm able to represent you all once again very soon. Please send my very, very best wishes and good luck to all involved. Quis Separabit, Colonel Catherine."
So So I think that's absolutely lovely. I love the addition of the letter and everything. And so she inherited this role as the Colonel of the Irish Guards from Prince William, who took up the role as Colonels of the Welsh Guard once he became the Prince of Wales. And so I've seen also people talking on social media, and obviously these are people very much aligned with Harry and Meghan, talking about how Harry can't wear his uniform, yet Catherine can be a colonel. And I just want to point out that Harry left. If he wanted to be a colonel of a regime, like an honorary colonel, he could have stayed and he would have gotten that. So he might have even been the colonel of the Irish Guards. I'm not sure, but he would have had ceremonial roles, but he declined that. He decided he wanted to do his own thing. And so that is what happened. So it's just important to point out those things. Though I am sad that we won't see Catherine. Most likely, I am excited for trooping on Saturday. Prince Andrew, of course, is making a bit of the news again, and this is because of his refusal to vacate Royal Lodge. This is you could call it a grace and favor residence, although that's not really the case. It is a lease he took out during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II that lasts for 75 years. And King Charles is sort of anxious to get his brother out of the estate. And this is for a myriad of reasons. One of them, of course, is that Andrew is no longer working royal. He is an empty nester. And so to have such an ostentatious property that requires a massive amount of upkeep just seems to be a little much. And then there's also the issue of covering security for the home. And he is also the one who gives Andrew a $1 million a year. You could call it salary or just a living wage, if that's what it could be called. He is hoping, Charles is, that Andrew sees the light and decides to move back to Frogmore Cottage, as a source tells Kate Mansi in a recent Times article. The king's kindness is not without limit, and there's a very good option for Andrew to move into Frogmore Cottage, recently vacated by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, which also has the benefit of being within the Windsor Castle security cordon, hence reducing the need for alternative round-the-clock security for Royal Lodge. He is taking longer than desirable to recognize the reality of the situation, even though it is clearly the most sensible course of action. If he doesn't agree to move a property better suited to his needs, then the king may have to consider the levels of support he is willing to provide. And the Royal Lodge is a very large property and encompasses 40 hectares in the heart of Windsor Great Park. And it goes on. So there are front gates where police can stay, or private security guards, as is now the case. It is a 30-room property with 7 bedrooms, a grade 2 listed home. The estate includes a gardener's residence, 6 cottages for live-in staff, and a police suite providing accommodation for security officers. So this is a very, very large estate. And of course, the problem is, can Andrew keep up the maintenance on the home? And that is the key issue here, because there has been a lot of reports that sort of the upkeep issues are starting to pile up in terms of paint falling off and needing to be redone, and all these sorts of things that need to be happening every single year. The property apparently is also full of countless treasures from the royal collection, including an ancient sword, as the Times reports, which made contemporary history because Princess Beatrice accidentally cut Ed Sheeran's face when pretending to knight the musician at a party. So I didn't realize it was an ancient sword. I knew it was a sword, but I didn't realize it was an ancient one. And apparently, obviously, both Fergie and Andrew are a bit of pack rats. And so there are issues there. Apparently, Edo, Beatrice's husband, is trying to shake them of that a bit. And of course, the challenge here is that Charles wants to push his brother to a smaller property, which is already been well maintained because of all of Harry and Meghan's renovations. But it's also where he doesn't want to cause Andrew to go the Prince Harry route. The problem is, though, Andrew doesn't really have anything he is doing. And this is key. I think everybody should have a job and a focus. It helps you. It helps motivate you. And right now, Andrew doesn't have that. And although I'm not saying at all that he should be a working royal, he should not. But Andrew needs something to do. And he needs to recognize, because I think in his mind, kind of like Harry lives a bit in the land of delusion, that he's hoping at some point his fortunes change and all of a sudden he can once again be a working royal. And he just needs to recognize that that is not going to be the case and adjust appropriately. And he just doesn't seem to be doing that as of yet. But apparently the king is also fond of not only Beatrice and Eugenie, but also their mother, Sarah, as well. And they're just really hoping Sarah at some point can help Andrew see sense, and that he is able to perhaps decide for himself or just take the loss and downside. But his ego just doesn't seem to want to let it go. And as a friend of King Charles said, it can be done tidily or untidily. It can be done with grace and dignity, or it can be forced upon him. It's all rather sad. But as things stand, life at Royal Lodge is set to become increasingly cold and uncomfortable for the Duke. The only question now is when he will realize that he has become a prisoner of his own pride, and that handing back the keys will afford him far greater comfort and the continued support of his family. And I think this is so incredibly true, because in addition to all of this, I think when it comes to Andrew, I think he will find that a smaller property does serve him better, and that he can still enjoy all the things he does, just in a property that's just slightly smaller. Most older people tend to downsize once the children leave, and he might be able to actually stretch the £1 million a year allowance that he gets a bit further if he decides to agree with his brother here. And so I think Andrew should definitely take that, but this could also be a very contentious issue. So we shall see in the future what becomes of it. But at this point, Andrew is still wanting to remain at Royal Lodge. He does have a 75-year lease, so he has 50 plus years. But at the same time, things have drastically changed since he signed that in early 2000s, and he needs to adjust accordingly. So we have the Danish royals here. So this is King Frederik and Queen Mary of Denmark. They all gathered, in addition to Queen Marguerite and Princess Brigitte, to commemorate the 175th anniversary of the adoption of the Danish Constitution, which occurred in 1849. The result of this was moving Denmark from an absolute monarchy to more of a democracy, though only at the time 15% of the population could vote. And so this has become the country's de facto national day. And we've seen national days in other Scandinavian countries. And oftentimes, I know at least the Norwegian one commemorates when the Constitution was signed, creating Norway. And so it's interesting that they have these kind of days, because obviously in the United States, we have July 4th, which is coming up next month. But the European countries don't really have the same kind of founding day, because they weren't really founded. They were kind of always there, if that makes sense. The people of Denmark, the Danes, have been around since 900s, 800s, even before. And so they don't really have the same like founding day like we do, because they don't really have a day where they like, we're striking independence and becoming our own country. That's more of a modern phenomenon in many ways. And so just for a little bit more history, this was signed by King Frederick the 12th after pleas from the public. It replaced the King's Act of 1665. And so there's only one official print that exists, and it is in Danish. So there was another one written in Latin. It usually resides at the National Archives of Denmark, but will be on display from June 5th, 2024, which was the National Day, to December 31st, 2024. So if you're interested in checking that out, go ahead and do so. Queen Mary and King Frederik of Denmark went to Holmen's Church for the commemorative ceremony. And again, we're joined by Queen Marguerite, who abdicated in early this year, and her sister, Princess Benedict. So it's just great to commemorate their national day and to just show the heritage and history of Denmark. Speaking of national days in Scandinavian countries, we also have a Swedish National Day, which occurs on June 6th every year, and it commemorates and honors the election of Gustav Vasa as King of Sweden in 1523, which many consider the foundation of modern Sweden. And so it officially became a public holiday in 2005, although they have been celebrating it for quite a while under initially Swedish Flag Day. That changed to Swedish National Day in 1983. And so the whole royal family came out, with the exception of Princess Madeline and her family, who are in the process of moving back to Sweden. And she and her family actually arrived on Thursday, June 13th, to the country, where they are resettling for the next at least couple of years. So next we have Queen Letizia of Spain, who recently visited Guatemala as part of the Spanish Agency for International Development and Cooperation, which is often shortened to just Spanish Cooperation. And so its acronym is AECID, which I think is very similar to USAID. So that's the United States Aid Foundation that gives a lot of countries and foreign aid all over the world. And so I think this is essentially the Spanish version of that. So she visited several projects associated with AECID in her short 48-hour trip. She's also still suffering from motor neuron. And in addition to that, apparently she broke a couple of her toes. So The queen, you can tell in some of these video clips, is definitely limping. And so as La Vanguardia explains, her visit brought visibility to those programs and justifies the funds that Spain dedicates to improving the lives of the most disadvantaged communities. She met with First Lady Lucrecia Pinedo, saw restoration work in Centennial Park, which is in the Guatemalan capital. I went to Lake Atayalén region and visited the town of San Jose Chiquaya. Some of the projects she viewed include projects related to WASH, which is water and sanitation, if you don't know, child malnutrition, and political training for women and youth. She also toured a center that focuses on women who are victims of domestic violence or sexual violence. So I think that seems rather awesome. And I appreciated the whole time how she wore that red vest, because I don't know, guys, if I could have worn the red vest the whole time, because I would have gone, I don't like this, but I appreciate that she does. She's obviously representing the organization, representing her country very, very well here. Next, we have King Abdullah of Jordan celebrating his silver jubilee with a rather grand celebration, including a military parade and concert. At the event, His Majesty shared his perspective that Jordanians have earned the respect for their stances, principles, humanity, and noble values. He also said, "I am proud to be Jordanian. For Jordan is achievement during the harshest of circumstances, perseverance during the most difficult of times, and standing firm by what is right during the toughest of situations." This is from a translation on the official Jordanian website. Around 9,000 Jordanians attended the event as spectators, including the royal family, senior officials and officers, and diplomats from Arab and foreign countries. There were 3,200 military and security personnel who participated in the parade. My personal favorites, absolutely, are the camels. I love that. I do enjoy seeing them on horseback too, and the men with the very, very high march, because that looks absolutely exhausting. I think that would kick my hiney at the gym. Segments where 1,000 young men and women performed cultural and folklore presentations, in addition to 12 floats that represented each government. And during right now, it's a very special time in the royal family too, because not only is this silver jubilee, but he and his wife, Queen Rania, are expecting their first grandchild. Princess Rajwa is expected to give birth, I believe, sometime later this summer, if not very early fall. And so if she has a boy, he will be the heir to the throne after his father. But if she has a girl, she will not be included in the line of succession at all. So just interesting thing to note there. So very special celebration. Queen Rania also busted out the Arabic scroll tiara, which I've done a video about for Royal Fashion News. And so I will be getting that posted at some point this week, because this will take me a bit to edit. So that will be an exciting moment as well. So next we have, which is really interesting, is that the Belgian royal family going to vote. And I found this story, I was looking at this going, wow, okay, because all 4 of the king's children voted. And I believe actually none of them voted in the previous election, if I remember correctly. And so this is from Wim de Hand Schroeder, who said, Belgium is one of the few remaining countries where turning up to vote is compulsory for adults. And as voting rights have been extended for European elections to 16 and 17-year-olds, all children of King Philippe and Queen Matilda have to vote, including Princess Eleanor, who is 16. So all the kids showed up to vote together. I would say they were in rather casual attire. They went there, they stood in line. And obviously, as well, all the cameras were on them. So I'm sure they're just standing there going, do we have to be like monitored this whole time? Obviously, their parents, King Philippe and Queen Matilda, do not vote, as he is head of state. And so again, he has a different role to play. And although the children are essentially sort of arms of that head of state, they are not actually serving in that role yet. And so they are all voting there. And so according again to Dehand Schroeder, anyone who doesn't show up to vote without a valid reason at an election in Belgium, where attendance is currently mandatory, risks a fine of 40 to 80 euros. Of course, royals keep their voting behavior or their decision to vote blanco strictly secret. So again, I just found that super interesting, because I know we've talked about in terms of the royal family, the British royal family, that they, as far as we're aware, they do not vote. We know for sure that King Charles and Queen Camilla will not. And Catherine and William maybe are a bit of a question further on down the line. I'm sure they do. But it is an interesting sort of tension between, is that you are a representative of the state, you are a head of state, yet you do not enact policy. And so should you have the right to vote on policy like everybody else? Because although you aren't really part of it, you do sign it, you are sort of the face of it. So again, it's just an interesting thing that this is what happens in Belgium. Other members of the Belgian royal family also went ahead and voted too, including King Albert, who also recently celebrated a birthday. And so the ages of the king's children are from 22, and that would be for Princess Elizabeth down to Princess Eleanor, who is 16. So I just thought, again, super interesting news there. We also have King Willem Alexander and Queen Maxima of the Netherlands spending some time in the United States of America on a working visit. And so according to the royal website, and so during their visit, the king and queen in Georgia were accompanied by the Minister of Infrastructure and Water Management from the Netherlands. And in New York State, they were joined by the Minister for Foreign Trade Development Cooperation. And so the purpose was to highlight the strong bilateral ties between the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the United States and its economic relations with Georgia and New York State in particular. The U.S. is the Netherlands' biggest non-EU partner in regard to economic and security cooperation. Those close transatlantic ties are essential in safeguarding the Netherlands' prosperity. This partnership is based on a shared history that goes back 400 years. With more than 5 million Americans tracing their roots to the Netherlands, there are close personal and cultural ties between our countries. Georgia is currently the Netherlands' 10th largest U.S. trading partner, a rank that is rising fast. The state capital of Atlanta is a key logistical hub, both for the European and for the Caribbean parts of the kingdom. Atlanta has long been a key logistical hub, with its airport one of the world's largest, as well as being among the most efficient and busiest in terms of the passenger numbers it processes. On the Georgian coast lies the port of Savannah, the fourth largest and fastest growing port in North America, which I did not know. For the Netherlands, New York State is a key trade and investment partner alongside California and Texas. The state is home to leading knowledge institutions that are driving innovation and global challenges such as climate and energy transition and the digital transformation. And if you remember as well, initially New York State was actually a Dutch colony. So there's a long history with the Netherlands there in New York. And so they are actually visiting New York Wednesday the 12th and Thursday the 13th. Another interesting thing to note here, if you didn't know, is that in addition to Atlanta being the busiest airport in the entire world, which it is, it's also a Delta hub. And KLM, which is the Dutch national airlines, is actually a partner with Delta. And so there's even a connection there as well. And so they spent time visiting with the governor. They went to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. They spent some time in the Beltline, met with the mayor of Georgia. They went to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention there in Atlanta. In Georgia, they went to the Savannah Historical District, and we got a great picture there. They went to Savannah State University, the Port of Savannah. And in New York, they met with the governor and CEOs. They in the afternoon met with NY Creates, which is a New York tech hub. They went to the Schuler Mansion, a historic house dating to 1763 that was once the home to Dutch General Philip J. Schuler and his wife Catherine van Rensselaer. And there the king and queen will talk with a group of young people about climate change and a healthy living environment, together with Governor Hochul and other New York politicians. So that is today. And then on the last day, on Thursday the 13th, they will be visiting New York City in East Flatbush. They will spend time at the Future 400 Initiative, and then they will conclude their visit that evening. And I realized at the very last minute, I totally missed this tour, because if I had known about earlier, guys, you betcha I would have been there to see it. So I'm a bit bummed I missed out on it. I was just a little bit too late. For some reason, it just didn't seem to hit royal Twitter. So I just totally missed out. And that is totally my apologies. But trying to follow every and all royals is harder than you might think, because there's so many different places to find information. Sometimes things aren't in English. So it is a bit of a tough job, but I do absolutely love it. And so to close out our program a bit here, we'll go over some short bit of news. King Charles's banknotes are officially in circulation, so you may see some of those. Hampton Court Palace officially hosted the Queen's Reading Room Festival, which was backed by quote-unquote popular demand. Notable speakers include historian Tracy Borman and Helena Bonham Carter. And I will say, I was there when they were setting up for that in 2022, and I was exceptionally bummed because I felt like all the stands and stuff, the stands they had to put up for the palace really just made it harder to see the palace, and I wasn't necessarily super happy about that, because I hadn't been to Hampton Court Palace in so long. We also have Heredity Grand Duke Guadalupe is in Japan for an official visit. Princess Alexia will likely be attending the University on Groningen, which is in the north of the Netherlands near the border with Germany. So they've still been a bit cagey on if she's going, but apparently it leaked that she has an email address from that university. So it seems like that is where she's going. Earl Spencer, so this is Diana's brother, Princess Diana, is divorcing his third wife. And if rumors are correct, he has already moved on to another woman. So not great. And King Frederick and Queen Mary's trip to the Faroe Islands was canceled. So that is a bit sad. And then, like I said, upcoming events, we will have Trooping the Color on June 15th, where we'll be having a special live stream starting at 6:30 a.m. and it'll probably end around 8:30, so or whenever the fly past ends, which should be by that time. And the state visit to Japan is officially going forwards and will go from June 25th to the 27th. And we do have some royal birthdays to commemorate as well. We have Princess Madeline turning 42 and King Albert of Belgium turning 90. And obviously, he is still no longer actually king of the throne because he had an illegitimate daughter, and that created quite a kerfluffle. So he ended up having to abdicate. So guys, that is it for the latest edition of the Crown Report. Please let me know what you thought about what we covered. Is there anything else you thought we should add that we didn't? I appreciate you so much for watching, and I shall see you guys again next week. Bye.